Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Macro View. This is Osama Rizvi coming to you from Primary Vision Network. In this episode, I wanted to talk about how geopolitics is actually driving the global economic decisions. And this was very important because previously or recently this has started to resurface that the decisions, the economic decisions are not now being based on principles, let's say, of macroeconomy or certain things that would benefit corporations or the consumers, but rather on geopolitics that has far-reaching consequences for countries across the world, especially the countries, the developing countries, the emerging markets, which are dependent upon these investments that they would be getting from the advanced economies. And that is what we are going to explore today. So we're diving right in. First of all, look at this chart, and this is very interesting. This shows that how the division between the countries who have voted. So the context is that one of the most important fundamental or structural changes that has happened as an aftermath of the Russia-Ukrainian war is that the world has been bifurcated into countries that have either directly or indirectly, formally or informally condemned Russian actions on Ukraine, and vice versa, the countries who have not done so. So the countries that have not done those who haven't condemned Russia for its actions are now facing. They have to face the music in that, and this can be inadvertently in that there has been a reduction in investments in that part. So a Bloomberg Economics analysis of the UN foreign direct investment data points to a world organizing into rival blocs based on the UN votes on Russia-Ukrainian war. And of the 1.2 trillion in greenfield FDI, foreign direct investment, in 2022, close to 180 billion shifted from geopolitical blocs from countries that declined to condemn Russia to those that did. So 180 billion is a huge amount of money, especially in the times when the global macro environment is quite tricky. According to a report, the use of word geopolitics by S&P chief executives, by lieutenants, by different companies have touched 12,000 times in 2023. This was the amount of times that this word was used, which was 3 times as compared to 2 years ago. That was really important. Secondly, the other chart also shows the division of these countries based on the UN votes for Russia and against Russia and their share of GDP. This is very interesting. And this was an article in Bloomberg. This was a long read, and it really spoke about that whether, even if there is an iron curtain in place, an economic iron curtain, it's still a very porous one because the global economy, the global economic system has been intricately integrated, and this nothing shows this best as the recent sanctions on Russian economy, and they almost failed to make Russia a pariah state. The oil and gas revenues are still there, somewhat down, but the drastic results that were to be expected weren't achieved. And this is because the global economic system has been so much integrated. That is why we have seen the word shift toward de-risking when it comes to US and China trade war, other than as compared to decoupling. The next chart shows the value of greenfield foreign direct investment by destination. And this, you can see there's a clear division. Both countries who condemned Russia are in yellow, did not are in this pink, maroonish, and the total FDI is in black. And you can see that using, so this was done by Bloomberg Economics using UN votes to condemn Russia. Bloomberg Economics found that the share of greenfield investment going to countries that didn't condemn the invasion averaged only 15% in the last 2 years, down from 30% in the decade to 2019 in that time period. China's share has fallen less than 2% in 2022 from nearly 11% on average over 2010 to 2019 in that decade. The data also points that US and the other Western companies invested more in like-minded countries, and the US was the biggest winner since it was the largest. It saw the largest increase in share of global greenfield investment versus decade leading up to pandemic. The next chart shows how. So the next chart focuses really on China, and it speaks about how China was affected by it. Whereas you saw that the U.S. companies in greenfield investment in China plunged about 48%, and those by European firms dropped 37% versus 5 years leading up to the pandemic. Pandemic being a very important economic point, of course. And updated IMF. This was also this was also established by IMF and Bloomberg once again. And one thing that is very important to note here is that it doesn't mean that China has been left alone or that China is going through some serious lack of investments. We all know, and we have done shows, that China has been suffering from serious economic situation, but that is temporary, that is situational, and a context is needed to interpret that. But overall, China's share of the global wealth, China's share of the global manufacturing, China's share of the global GDP output, China's share of the global consumption, it remains in double digits, and hence as important as it was, or rather more important moving forward. In the same time, it is important to note that China has also signed hundreds of billions of dollars of energy projects with Russia and Iran, and there has been a shift in away from dollar. Of course, it'll take around, 100 years something, but that shift had at least started in all these years. So look, it's not a lose-lose for China at all. And this was very interesting. This shows you how the annual global FDI between countries that geographically or geopolitically close. So these are some countries can be geographically close, like India and Pakistan, but geopolitically they aren't as well. So there is literally no train between the countries. And this chart actually highlights that point and the divergence between the economic decisions and the FDI these countries have been getting based on that. IMF also, in their chart of the week, showed a very interesting thing where they highlighted how the global economy is being fragmented as the number of trade restrictions imposed annually have reached up to 3,000. And it was a record increase, and it is expected that this can wipe up about $7 trillion from the global GDP. The global GDP being $104 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. So what does this whole segment tells us about is that there seems to be a wider trend at place, and in order to the businessmen, the policymakers, the observers, the traders, they need to take into account the geopolitical events very closely and keenly in order to make decisions. Finally, the market sentiment tracker, the bearish side remains overwhelmingly thronged, heavy. Russia and Turkey have increased interest rates. Iranian crude exports have hit highest recently. There seems to be a rolling recession in the US. Eurozone's PMI still in decline, a slight improvement. Germany is about to be the sick man of Europe. We have talked a lot about Germany. Housing market has slowed down in China, Germany, and the US. There are some positive here on the right side, on the recovery side, but the recessionary side seems to be dominant still. That's all from today. I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.